So tonight we're going to talk some about mental health and nutrition, and some about how a plant-based vegan diet really changed my life. And raise your hand or write in the chat if you are already vegan or plant-based. Nobody fully yet? Okay. Okay, so these are some of the things that changed for me and happened in my life over the last couple years that kind of led to my transition. Great, and now the photos are not going to work. So a little bit overview of the topics that we're going to cover. I'm going to share a little bit of my story, which is going to be like, I went through a mental health crisis about 6 years ago. I'll share some about what led to that, my recovery, and then the energetic living that I found through that experience and how that led to the life that I now live. And I'll share also some scientific evidence about the correlation between mental health and nutrition for those of you who you really want to learn like the scientific information behind it. I'll share some about the mindset shifts that also led to greater mental health victories when it came to nutrition, and then how to apply it in your own life. And then finally at the end, I'll just open it up to any question and answer that you have related to mental health and nutrition, or you know, how to do it for yourself, or anything that comes up throughout the presentation. So this talk is not going to be about promoting any kind of fad diet. Plant-based nutrition has a lot of scientific research behind it. It's amazing that it's really not as widely known as it is. But plant-based nutrition really goes back to the ideal nutrition that we're supposed to be eating and what's best for our bodies. But a lot of it is not promoted because even the scientists, they're like, they know that this is the right thing to do, but at the same time, it's something that is really hard for a lot of people to do. And so they're like, well, you know, if we tell them they can have a little bit of meat, it'll be easier for them to do it. And so this is really more about like getting back to what is really, really good for our bodies. And it's just amazing. So I'm excited to share that with you. This is also not how to fix your mental health with your nutrition. So mental health is such a broad topic. There's so much that goes into it that's wider than nutrition, but it is something that can definitely, you know, when you're going through different things in our lives, the last thing we need to do is make it more difficult on ourselves by not having good nutrition to keep us fueled and focused and energized during that time. So it can definitely help, but it is just a component. So I want to make that clear that this is not like, hey, fix your nutrition and go plant-based and all your problems go away. Like, it's definitely not going to be that kind of thing. This also isn't going to be a regurgitation of research, facts, and figures. It is going to be a bit of narrative for me personally and how that applies to you, asking you questions that lead to your own self-discovery. But I am going to share information and education with you. Of course, this is not to sell anything. This is all just education-based. Tonight, we're going to talk about inspiration, education, and raising awareness. So if you're not plant-based, this is something that will help you to be able to make that decision in a more educated way. Like I said, I apologize for my pictures. I don't know what happened. We'll see. We'll see how they go. I love it when it like looks perfect before like you begin, and then you start and you're like, okay, now it's decided to all disappear. So as far as my credentials and my experience, I have an undergrad and secondary English education. So I was a high school English teacher for a couple years. I have my master's in counseling. My husband and I also owned a restaurant. And so as a business owner spouse, you basically become an unpaid worker. So I was like doing all the secretarial behind the scenes things. And I was also doing health and fitness coaching while I was a therapist. When I was a therapist, I was on the behavioral health unit at the hospital. It was like the ER unit. So it was really severe situations of people who were on the brink of suicide or tried to commit suicide. And so it was very interesting to see how their own nutrition and how their own lifestyle choices led to those situations. And it was actually the unit that I was on for a time in my own recovery. So it's very interesting to see it from both sides and learn through that lens as I was learning about health and fitness coaching and you know, the connection between the mental health and the fitness and nutrition. So that's when I decided to start my own business, and I've been a plant-based vegan for over 2 years now. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of like how I grew up, so you can see a little bit of the background. Dairy and meat for me was life. Like that was, I really didn't even like water. I was pretty much only drinking milk. I liked about a handful of veggies. I could literally count on my fingers how many veggies I liked. Fasting was a form of weight loss. And, you know, during my teenage years, I had really bad acne, and I was put on 2 really strong cycles of Accutane, which if you don't know anything about that, it has side effects of depression. It can lead to birth defects in your children. It can lead to kidney issues later in life if you use it too much. And so all of this started to work together to create all of these different side effects that you can see there in the center. And then that played out in my mental health with all of this unexplained sadness and just kind of emptiness. I was very much about providing for others, but not taking care of myself. I had a very much an all or nothing kind of way of looking at things. And so, like I said, with fasting as a weight loss plan, it was like, I didn't know what nutrition was. So it was just, I'm just not going to eat. You know, if I put on weight, you just don't eat. And that leads to a lot of like mood swings. It can lead to depression, nutrition deficiencies. So I was iron deficient. And, you know, I had even symptoms that I didn't realize were symptoms. I had so much identified with them, and you guys may experience these things as well and not even realize it. But I drank dairy for so long. I had so much dairy in all of my meals, meat in all of my meals. And I couldn't believe the change when I just removed dairy from my diet. There was this mental fog that I thought was just me. I was like, I'm just slow. I'm just more depressed. I just don't have as much energy as other people. I see all these like energetic, bouncy people, and I was like, I'm just not like that, you know? And I didn't realize how much of it was really connected to my nutrition. And so sometimes we take those things on and we're like, this is my identity. I'm just highly emotional. I'm just highly sensitive. I just have these mood swings that go up and down, and you don't really realize how these things can be connected to your nutrition. So even from a young age, you know, I think a lot of us see these things, but yeah, again, we just think they're normal. So if only we'd known, you know, like some of these things when we were younger, and this is something that I get really passionate about. We are raising up future generations. Some of you come to me and you're therapists or you're givers, and in your profession, you take care of others. And so if we know and we have the education, we can share that with others. And of course, those who are open, some people are not open to receiving it. And so we live our lives the best example we can, and we share the best we can. But to learn that like your diet, if it's high in refined sugars, it worsens your body's regulation of insulin, which is going to promote that inflammation and oxidative stress. That's going to lead to eventually mood disorders, depression, and issues like that. So it's amazing to me that we now know these kind of things, and now we can make a difference for ourselves and for future generations. So in my young adult years, things continued to escalate, and the side effects got longer, the list got larger. I started getting even worse with my nutrition and started having, you know, if you guys have ever been in college or you're like living on your own for the first time, and like you do everything instant meals. It was like, it was cheap, it was heavily salted, it was like heavy carbs, and you know, that's not really balanced nutrition for your body. And lots of meat and dairy again for me. And then I started using just like not eating as a way of, you know, losing weight or dealing with stress and anxiety. It was like, I'm just not going to eat. And of course that leads to more side effects, which then leads to more mental health issues. And so I started also isolating more, kind of chasing highs, and then even hiding those emotions because they were getting negative responses. And so, of course, if you're having heavy mood swings, then people are like, oh, stay away from her. So then you try to hide it, and then it becomes even worse. And we internalize that pain, which turns more into, for me, it turned into suicidal ideation and severe depression. So, so it just continued to to get worse through those years. And to realize that I wasn't really wired this way. I mean, if you've had any of these food intolerances, you know, whether you've had acne or lethargy, you've had gas or bloating, fatigue, nausea, I mean, any of these things, we think, oh, well, this is just how my body is. But when you remove certain foods that are your food intolerance, and there's a list of them that I can give you that are like, I guess, typical ones, but you can also go to holistic doctors or a nutritionist that can help you to do more of an official test to help you figure out what foods may be in food intolerances for you. Some lead to depression, suicidal ideation, and we just don't know these things. So recognizing what may be leading to it for you. And then of course, not eating, these are some things that can come from that. So, and this is not, you know, this is not even just women. My husband will be like, oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm just not going to eat today. I'm like, babe, like, what are you doing? Like, that's not how you, that's not a weight loss plan. And then your body also goes into this starvation mode where it just holds on to whatever it gives you or whatever you give it. And so it's like, I can't lose any of this. I don't know when the next time I'm going to eat is going to come. And then, you know, that makes it even worse. And we don't see the weight loss that we want to see. Or we lose weight because our stomach empties and then we eat again and we're filled back up. And of course our scale, you know, the weight on the scale goes up and we're like, oh, I put on a pound. No, you just got food in your stomach now, you know, like nothing really changed there. So, you know, recognizing what it is to have good solid nutrition that leads to healthy weight loss, if that's your goal, or healthy maintenance if you are at a healthy weight. It's so important to know this. And then adult health, you know, this led into, so as you can see, it starts to build up and it started leading to alcohol binges and food binges. So for a long time it was, I'm just not going to eat. I'm just not going to eat. And then it was like, screw it all. I'm just going to eat everything. I just don't even care. I'm so stressed and I'm dealing with all this stuff and I just can't handle it anymore. And these kind of things lead to more severe symptoms in all of these areas. And so if you've ever seen anybody go through these kind of things and, you know, they have these questions, they're like, I just don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why this is happening. They seem to try all these different things. You know, if you've tried any of like the fad diets out there, you got keto, which is just like, you know, eliminate all carbs. You got paleo, which is just eat all the meat. And these things they're not healthy. They're not a balance for our body. And our body definitely needs some of, you know, these different areas. We need some whole grains, we need some carbs, just not the processed carbs, you know. So it's really paying attention to the solid nutrition behind what is, you know, crazy and the fad out there. So yeah, so this mental health crisis started to evolve and did lead to me eventually going into the mental health hospital. And I couldn't believe that I'd gotten there as somebody that I saw myself as a giver and a supporter for other people and was always trying to take care of others. I was like, this is my lowest low. And I never want to get to this place again. And this is never where I saw myself. And so, you know, step by step, I started to pull myself out of it and really figure out what went wrong. And so as, you know, as you guys, I'm sure have heard, like when you hit rock bottom, like there's nowhere to go but up. That's kind of what I hit. It was like, you know, I'm humiliated. Everybody sees me like in the mental health hospital. They know that I've been drinking heavily and all these things. And it was like, well, I guess it's all out there now. There's no more hiding it. And so I started asking questions and started seeking help at that time and being open about, you know, what I'd gone through and was amazed. Like I couldn't even believe it. And I couldn't believe how the more open I was about my experience, the more people connected to it and were like, you know, you didn't know it, but they were like, yeah, I've been there too. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like there's so many of us that have been through this, but we keep it quiet or, you know, we don't want to share it with other people. And so that's why I stand up for it and advocate for it now. But these are some of the steps that helped me to lead to it. And so next I'm going to be talking about plant-based nutrition, but it is important to recognize that it's not just plant-based nutrition when we're talking about mental health. It's, you know, one of the steps is cleaning out the noise, you know, dealing with the problem itself, letting go of toxic relationships. If you have people in your life that you're allowing to speak into your life who are constantly tearing you down, those may be voices that you need to quiet, even if it's just for a time, because they think they have their best interests in mind for you, but they really don't. And, you know, facing some of those demons and those false beliefs that, that you're dealing with your mental health. And then, you know, slowly really filtering the kind of input that you're getting in. And so I started getting naturally active, and I was like, I'm not going to do some fitness program. I'm not going to do some, you know, super structured thing with a trainer in a gym that's going to make me feel super awkward. So I just want to get more naturally active. And so it was like, instead of driving in a car, I'm going to ride my bike. I'm going to walk to places. And I started getting more naturally active, doing things that I just enjoyed doing. And then developed authentic relationships with a coach who was a friend of mine. You know, that was when I met my husband as well, and he was a really good influence. And I had a really good friend. And so for a couple years, it was really literally like 3 people that I talked to and was like allowed. And then when I say talk to, I mean like allowed to speak into my life. And so, you know, really paying attention to the relationships that you have around you and saying, are these people building me up? Are these people that I can be honest with and openly communicate with, that are going to, you know, be able to support me during this? And if not, you know, sometimes it's not about eliminating those people or just like, I'm just going to cut them all out. You know, sometimes we don't need to do that, but maybe they're just not people that we trust with our inmost being, I guess you could say. And then I really adopted a one day at a time mentality, a one day stronger, if you've heard that saying, you know, having that posted somewhere where it's like, there's no more extremes. We're not talking about extremes anymore. It's not all or nothing. It's not either we binge on everything or we don't eat anything. It's eating nutrition that fuels our body. And if we make a mistake or we don't like how we handled a situation, and I would even say, you know, like eating a piece of cake is not a mistake. Having a drink is not a mistake. It's just that if those are things that you're not wanting to do, then there are opportunities to be like, okay, well, yeah, that didn't make me feel so hot, so I'm just not going to do that next time. And so it's not, oh my goodness, I failed, I fall off the wagon, you know, I'm a failure. It doesn't become self-deprecation. It's just, you know, this is an opportunity to learn my body, learn what works for me and what feels good. And then I started learning about nutritional education, which is really, really important, especially when we're talking about plant-based nutrition. There are a lot of really helpful resources, and I'm happy to share those with you as well. But I started following a meal plan that was structured and helped me to learn about the self-worth from the results. And so some pounds went up on the scale, or I started to put on weight. And so we identify our self-worth with that. And we're like, I'm no good as a person because my weight is off or isn't where it's supposed to be. And that's really like, those are completely separate things. You know, that's your self-worth is not defined by the number on the scale. It's not defined by who you are. So, you know, learning to separate the two of those is really powerful for a lot of us. That's the biggest challenge, is identifying ourselves with the scale. So what is plant-based? And so when we get into this, you know, I've shared some about the mental health history. Now, what is plant-based and how does this lead to a stronger, healthier being? So we're looking for whole grains. We're looking for whole foods as far as vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, and legumes. These are not, and legumes, if you're not familiar with that term, is like lentils, beans, those kind of things. Peas. So in eating this way, we're really getting back to the basics of nutrition and the basics of what we are supposed to be eating for our bodies. And, you know, there are so many documentaries that you can watch that they talk about even the structure of our teeth and the way that our teeth are pretty much smooth across. So our teeth are designed more as an herbivore. And same with our intestinal tract. We have a really long, windy intestinal tract, which is better for breaking down plants. And so when you talk about meat, meat can take a really long time to process and digest, which is why it's also higher in fat content, makes us feel slower, more lethargic, and leads to a lot of health issues. And so, so by eating this way, we're nourishing our body the way we need to, and gut, a healthy gut. So they call that the second brain. And so what we put in our body is really what goes to our mind. It's what fuels our brain, it fuels our mind, fuels our body. And so helps with our serotonin levels. So if you've heard of that from depression, serotonin and dopamine, those are like our happy chemicals and help to keep things balanced. And so by fueling your gut with the right food, you're actually fueling the connection to your brain and the production of serotonin. And so it's a natural way of repairing a lot of what we've messed it up with. You know, we give it a lot of these foods that inflame it. You know, if you have any food intolerances or just with the meat and dairy, it inflames our insides and makes our insides like unhappy and confused. And it's like, how do we break down all this stuff? You know, this is fake food. You know, we eat a lot of like processed things, and our body's just like, yeah, I don't know what to do with this. So it just sits there, and it can't use it for fuel. And so that's going to lead to a lot of the emotional side effects as well. So these kind of foods really help you to feel strong and mentally clear, mentally focused, and energized. So these are some of the health side effects. This is taken specifically from a book called Whole by Thomas Campbell. And so, you know, plant-based prevents 95% of all cancers, and even those like created by environmental toxins, because the fiber that's going through your system when you're eating a plant-based diet helps to clean everything out, no matter where it comes from. Prevents nearly all heart attacks and strokes, because, you know, at times that's from the clotting in your veins. So in eating a plant-based diet, it helps everything to keep moving smoothly and not get clotted up with a lot of the excess fat and things that your body isn't really able to use. It also reverses severe heart disease, prevents and reverses type 2 diabetes so quickly and profoundly. Like, this is amazing to me, that after 3 days on this drug, and in the book he says this is the greatest drug, and he's talking about the plant-based diet. But he says after 3 days on a plant-based diet, it's dangerous for users to use insulin because your body recovers that fast. And so if you know anybody who has type 2 diabetes, or if you yourself have it, it's something that this just dumbfounds me. I'm like, everybody needs to know this information. And, you know, we feel so helpless. And I think that's a lot of where the mental health stuff comes from too, is like, I just don't know what to do. You know, like, I don't know how to help my body. I don't know how to make it better. And we go to a doctor, and the doctor's like, okay, take this pill. And we go over here, and we're like, oh, just do this fad diet and you'll lose weight. And then you don't, and you get so discouraged, and you're like, I don't even know which way is up. I don't know what they're all talking about. And it's so discouraging that in itself can lead to, you know, discouragement and depression. So this plant-based diet gets you to a healthy weight, and also does it in a healthy and sustainable fashion. You don't have to, you know, cut your portion sizes down to nothing where like you're hungry all the time. Since I've been plant-based, I don't go hungry. I eat as much as I want, as often as I want. If it's plant-based, I can eat it all day. And I don't overeat it because it has so much fiber that you feel full. And then you're like, okay, I'm good, I'm done. It's not one of those things where, like with salts and sugars, you're like, I just want to keep eating and eating and eating, and you just eat like a whole bag of it. You know, with this, you eat as much as you want, you feel full, you feel satisfied. And my husband, you know, he's one that was like, oh, I would never feel full on a plant-based diet. And lo and behold, now 2 years later, and he's eating everything that I eat. And he's still on occasion will have meat, but he really enjoys it, enjoys plant-based and what I eat. And he's always amazed that he still feels full. And so, so it does work for anybody. It's not just a specific kind of person, and you really can feel full and feel satisfied on it. It also eliminates migraines, acne, cold, flu, chronic pain, and intestinal distress. I haven't gotten sick since I've been plant-based. It improves your energy, cures erectile dysfunction. It has so much to offer both now and in your future years of life. You know, think about the quality of your life later down the road as well is going to be better through this. And then not only does it affect our bodies well, but it also affects the environment positively, which again, it's like, okay, how does this relate to mental health? For those of us who really see all of going on in the planet and in the world, and we're like, you know, where do we even begin? How do we even begin to make a step in the right direction for this? And this does it. You know, like you don't have to pick it. You don't have to do anything you know, super crazy, although I guess plant-based may be crazy for you as well, but this is something that can help end deforestation, you know, reduce the water contamination, shuts down factory farms. There's so much benefit to it. And I found a vegan calculator, which was pretty cool. And it shows like in the last 2+ years since I started, this is how many gallons of water I've saved, pounds of grain, square feet of forest, CO2, animals' lives. Like, this is crazy to me that just by switching the way that I eat, I've been able to make this much of an impact. And imagine if, how many do we have on here? I see 4 of you up here. Imagine if all 4 of us did this for the next 2 years and the kind of impact that that can have on the world. And you feel like part of a greater purpose, and you can see the change that's being made and be encouraged by that. So for those of you that that's part of, you know, your desire to serve a greater purpose, this is something that can do that. And so other mental health side effects, you know, it empowers us to know that this works. You know, this isn't something that the results are just going to disappear when you, you know, like with keto is like, as soon as you added carbs back in, then you're like back to the weight that you were. I heard that over and over and over again. Same with many of the other fad diets, but this is a lifestyle. This is a way of eating that fuels you and gives you the nutrition that you need. You don't feel like crap. It doesn't lead to later health issues, so it works. And so that can give you confidence in itself. You feel empowered in that way, empowered in the knowledge that you're part of something greater. I also found that when I gained ownership of nutrition and was like, I know what to do to gain muscle. I know what to do to lose weight. I know what to do. No matter what I want to do with my body, I know how to do it now. And that is so powerful when we feel so aimless beforehand. And we're like, I don't really know. So if this is possible, then what else is possible? You know, like what else could you do that you thought that you couldn't do before? So like, you're like, well, this is just how I am. I'm just like this. You know, there's so many things that we do that with without even really thinking about it. And so if it's possible to do this and you see those results for yourself and feel the energy come for yourself, imagine the energy that you would have to be able to do the things that you've wanted to do in your life that before now you just discounted or discredited and been like, nope, can't do it. So just imagine the potential there and the mental health that could be yours. And then as far as like the specific nutrition, this is where we get into the science behind the mental health side. What goes in comes out, you know, so what goes in our gut comes to our brain and comes into our emotions and who we are. So that's a bit of information about that. 95% of your serotonin is produced in the gastrointestinal tract, so that's your gut. So that's 95% of it. So what you're putting in down here is going to come out in your mind. And if you're looking for specific mood boosters that you're like, these are, you know, I want to have a good mental health. These are some things that are important to make sure that you're getting into your nutrition. Vitamin D is going to come from the sun, actually. And so just spending time in the sun, the right amount, you know, like not cooking yourself, but, you know, spending time in the sun helps you to get vitamin D, which helps with the absorption of different nutrients in your body. So each of these, I've read different articles on each of these different qualities. And actually, I don't have folate included in there, which has been linked to depression and actually schizophrenia. So there are so many things that when it comes to plant-based, it's going to help your mental health get so much better. And you know, we don't need to rely on you know, man-made products and man-made medications that are only meant to work temporarily or only fix one symptom, but then give you 25 more. Like, these are the side effects of a plant-based diet. I mean, how horrible are these side effects? I mean, what are the side effects? You're gonna get better. That's it. Like, there's no downside to a plant-based diet. Um, so. So now we know, now we have a bit of the education. I also hope that, of course, I can't share everything with you during this time, but now you have a little bit of a foundation. I'm happy to share my resources with you, and anything that you guys have questions on, I'm happy to share that with you. And, you know, just be thinking about, you know, what is your story going to be? What does your story look like up to this point? And how could you be sharing it in the future with others to inspire and encourage them to do the same thing that you've been able to experience for yourself? So these are the resources that I use specifically in this talk today, but I also have others that if you're wanting to transition to plant-based, then I can share those with you as well. But at this time, I'll just finish the presentation with, this is my husband's favorite quote. So his name is Gazim. And he just, even when life is chaotic, he's just like, life is beautiful. And I think when we come back to the simplicity of nutrition, that's the beauty of the planet and of our bodies. It all comes back to taking care of ourselves, taking care of our bodies so that we can be the best people that we can be. So that is all I have for you guys today. So is there anything that I touched on that you're like, that you have questions about, or things that I didn't cover that you'd like to talk more about?